Judge, give us a quick primer on asylum. And then today, the main objective is we're going to talk about a one-year rule to asylum.
Yeah, well, asylum is just one facet of the immigration nationality law. And how it came about, it's an interesting bit of history. There was a Russian sailor who was in the North Atlantic on a fishing trawler. And he had jumped ship when there was a U.S. cruiser or destroyer boat nearby. And he swam over and he asked the captain for refugee status. He says, he asked for sanctuary, actually. And Mr. Stevic was kept on the boat. The boat captain called in its chain of authority, called its superiors. They checked with the Department of State, and unfortunately, they put the man on who was asking for sanctuary or refugee status. They put him back on the boat under the argument that it was the international waters. He was a sailor on that boat, and he should be returned back to that boat, as insisted by the other boat captain. As it turned out, that boat was a spy ship. It was disguised as a fishing trawler, and it was off the North Atlantic, spying on submarine traffic and activity from the United States, going toward the north, through the North Atlantic to areas in the Bering, well, not the Bering Sea, but on the European side. But poor Mr. Stevic was returned back to the boat, and then he was immediately sent to a gulag. And these are not nice facilities. They're facilities in which hard labor, and they're mostly in rough areas, and this one was particularly in Siberia. And he was sentenced to that gulag for a long period of time. As it turned out, historically, his in his line of ancestry, there was a U.S. citizen, I think it was great-grandmother or grandmother, that had returned back to Russia. And in his line of ancestry, he could claim that relationship. And as it turned out, he was able to convince the Department of State and the United States government to be returned back to the United States on his claim of sanctuary. Because of that, and because of that seeming confusion, the immigration law was written to provide for asylum relief. As it's written in the Immigration Nationality Act, anybody who claims to be persecuted as a result of the 5 protected grounds that are in Section 208 of the Act would be entitled to asylum. And that's what we have today. Now, that has turned into a complete body of law, both case law and regulations, and the Act itself has been expanded to include various forms of asylum relief. One example is the inclusion of the family planning policy in China. It was deemed to be, yes, that was deemed to be a ground for asylum when people were forced by the government to adhere to a family planning policy that they did not subscribe to. So that was an expansion of that. And then there's the Chinese Student Protection Act, in which the students at Tiananmen Square were demonstrating for pro-democracy issues. And when they were repressed by the government, the U.S. government wrote into the Immigration Nationality Act that these individuals would be granted relief in the form of asylum to come to the United States and be safe. So, yes, asylum has expanded from the time Mr. Stevic jumped into the North Atlantic and swam to that U.S. destroyer.